After watching the Venom sequel, Let There Be Carnage, we are in shock, especially after a post-credits sequence that promises to change everything. Carnage was promised, and carnage was certainly delivered.
Any last words, Warden?
With a crazy and exciting ending promising big things to come in the world of Venom. But what does it all mean exactly?
Look at you now, huh? Now you're dying too.
Well, that's what we're going to take a look at here, as we go over the end of the movie and that shocking post-credits scene, and what exactly it means for the franchise and the character going forward. Spoiler warning, there will be heavy Venom 2 spoilers in this video. Alright, let's start off with the ending before we move over to that post-credits scene. So, unsurprisingly, the movie ends with a showdown between Eddie Brock's Venom and Cletus Cassidy's Carnage in a fight to the death. During their battle, Venom manages to get the upper hand after Shriek's yell saw Carnage separate from Cassidy, who then falls to the ground. Before the two can bond again, Venom puts Carnage back inside its own symbiote form before he bites Cassidy's head off and leaves his body by the chapel ruins. After this, Eddie and Venom flee to a remote desert island where they can live their best lives and actually live in peace after spending a majority of the movie bickering with one another. While on the beach, they talk about finding a place in the world in need of a lethal protector, which comic book fans will know is a reference to the Venom Lethal Protector series, which saw Venom transition from the villain to the anti-hero. Now, this will more than likely mean that there's a Venom 3 on the way, depending on how well this movie does in the box office, and we'll find Eddie and Venom using their codependent relationship for good, and likely fighting another symbiote somewhere along the line. But, which symbiote will that be exactly? While Carnage was seemingly defeated once and for all in the sequel, we can still never rule out him making his return at some point in the movies, even if that means him merging with a person other than Cassidy. Norman Osborn, perhaps? But the most likely villain for Venom 3 is Patrick Mulligan, aka Toxin. For a majority of the movie, Mulligan works with Eddie, as he wants Eddie to give him any leads from his conversations with Cassidy. However, Mulligan ends up being kidnapped by Carnage as Shriek seemingly exacts her revenge on him. But this isn't exactly the end of Mulligan, with the last shot of him showing his eyes turning white, which is setting up his role as another red symbiote. Well, like half red. Toxin. While Venom and Toxin's relationship is pretty dynamic in the comics, Toxin will likely be an out-and-out villain in the next Venom movie, and we wouldn't be surprised to see the two symbiotes clashing in the near future. But without further delay, let's talk about that post-credits scene, which officially confirms that Venom is part of the MCU. The scene starts with both Eddie and Venom watching a soap opera on TV as the two bicker over keeping secrets between them and everything Venom has seen and knows during his time spent traveling through space. Just as Venom is about to show Eddie a glimpse of what he knows, everything starts to change as the room starts to vibrate and shake and a bright light fades from the sky. Eddie then finds himself in a much fancier hotel room than the one he was originally in, and in a new location entirely. Then, on the screen, we see a familiar news report delivered by none other than J.K. Simmons' J. Jonah Jameson, who, just like he did in the Far From Home post-credits sequence, reveals Peter Parker's identity as Spider-Man to the rest of the world, and how he's responsible for the death of Mysterio. As the image cuts to a picture of Peter, Venom licks the screen, which is both foreboding and pretty creepy. The scene wraps up with a stranger coming out of the bathroom and saying, "Dude, what are you doing in my room?" Now, what's the likelihood that guy got eaten, huh? But now that he's part of the MCU, what does this actually mean? And when will we see Venom going up against or fighting with Spider-Man? Well, seeing as Venom seemingly transitions to the MCU, this suggests that the Sony universe ran parallel from the sacred timeline established in Loki. Seeing as Venom comes in at the end of Far From Home and not during the events of No Way Home, it is likely that the actions in Loki brought Venom into the MCU and not Doctor Strange's spell. Either way, though, this means that Venom could feasibly appear in No Way Home, and perhaps is that mystery character seen in the trailer after all. You know, the one which led fans to debate over whether it was either Venom or Lizard. My god, there was so much talk about it. Now, seeing as Venom was licking the screen after seeing Peter, the transition to the MCU could have reset all of the character growth seen in Venom 2 and make him be an all-out villain again. This could mean that he'll be a member of the Sinister Six and could start hunting down Spidey. Alternatively, if Venom remains the anti-hero, he could actually end up helping Spidey against the Sinister Six, but who knows? This is, of course, assuming that Venom appears in No Way Home, and not in another MCU movie like Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, or perhaps a movie like Spider-Man 4: Home Alone with Venom. However, with Kevin Feige suggesting that Tom Holland could leave the MCU and go to another universe, and with Marvel and Sony's symbiotic relationship being even more tenuous than Eddie and Venom's, what could happen is that Venom and Spider-Man leave the MCU together and move over to the already established Sony universe. With the likes of Kraven and Morbius in the works, Sony is obviously banking on this universe being a success, and they could potentially make a slew of live-action Spider-Man movies. As we mentioned earlier, Venom 3 was teased at the end of the sequel, so it's unlikely that they would not come back to that universe and the characters they seemingly left behind, so we wouldn't be too surprised if Venom's tenure in the MCU is short-lived. But of course, this is all conjecture at this point. Before we go, could a potential MCU movie starring Venom be a Secret Wars flick? With the seeds already being sown, a Secret Wars movie feels likely, and perhaps could involve our favorite symbiote, but admittedly, I'm not holding my breath.